Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins Trueritchie, also known as Baron Sidious. This video is a brief, open letter to all of the folks who are avowedly on the socio-political left in the United States and elsewhere, who have been expressing confusion, confoundment, or trepidation and worry over the fact, or their observation, that there is no quote-unquote Joe Rogan for the left. There was once. His name was Joe fucking Rogan. But perhaps when MSNBC took various audio clips of several episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience and mashed them together in an effort to obfuscate the fact that he was talking about Tulsi Gabbard and not Kamala Harris, perhaps that stuck in his craw. Before that, perhaps when CNN, with the assistance and trumpeting of their medical expert, quote-unquote, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, tried claiming that when he caught COVID-19, that Rogan threw horse paste dewormer down his gullet in order to fight off the infection, and played video of him when he was recovering, in which they altered the color saturation to make him look almost greenish. Perhaps that stuck in his craw. Perhaps prior to that, when CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Seattle Intelligencer, the Chicago Times Tribune, and numerous other media outlets tried getting him cancelled over the numerous instances over the course of his career wherein he has said the dreaded N-word, whilst quoting other comedians who use that word in its full context. Perhaps that stuck in his craw. Perhaps back when he offered his support to Bernie Sanders' attempt to attain the Democratic nomination, and he had to stand on the sidelines and watch as Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC cut Bernie's legs out from underneath him in an internal party coup, which would not be the last time they did that to one of their own. Perhaps that stuck in his craw just a little bit. Perhaps when Jen Psaki, the first press secretary under the Biden administration, effectively made a very loud implication that she would like to see, and the administration would like to see, Spotify, which she inadvertently and erroneously called Spotify, look into censoring and subjugating numerous episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast. Perhaps that stuck in his craw. Are you sensing a pattern here? This guy for years and years championed liberal and progressive ideals and policy. And at every turn, he was slapped about by your side of the aisle. Perhaps consider the next time that someone who you find to be oafish or a goon or talks too much on masculine issues and actually is trying to be good to you, that you don't repay that favor by slapping him in the face, lying about him, and trying to shove him out of all consideration to the remainder of the broader public. Perhaps then you wouldn't have lost him. And the latest insult to all of that was when he's recently clarified that he knew that Kamala Harris was going to be in Texas, within range of coming to his studio for a sit-down, that at every turn, when he offered an opening, and he said he wasn't going to be antagonistic or dig down and drill down into uncomfortable conversational areas, that he just wanted to have an open dialogue and find out who this person was as a person, he was rebuffed and denied. And then when her people said, well, yeah, we'll have a conversation, but you come to us, which he does not do. Historically, he does not do this. That's not his methodology. If you knew anything about the man, you would know that, but you don't care to know that. Prior to his move from California to Texas, he had his guests come to his studio in California. That's always been his methodology. The guests come to him. Period. So that was already one thing that you clearly don't know enough or care enough to try and meet the man in his methodology. You need him way more than he needs you at that moment. But you still foist this demand on him. Then you want to limit it to a single hour of conversation. That's not the methodology of his program. If you cared enough, you'd know that. You would have known that. And this is a guy who had RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders all sat down in his studio to have a conversation. He even had Marianne Williamson, who, yes, she's a bit out there, but she's a sweet woman at heart. Some of her ideas are batshit crazy, and she's a little woo-woo for my liking. But she always approached conversations of policy or humanity from a heartfelt and loving, caring position. Her approach was humane, if a little naive. But he even entertained her. He had John Fetterman on his program. And when he offered an equivalent exchange of showing candidates A and B, candidate B decided, no, you come to us, limit the time, and by the way, there's certain conversational topics that are off the table. So when you ask yourselves, or when you propound to say that, well, we don't have a Joe Rogan on the left, you had one and you treated him like shit for years. So don't sit there and bellyache and act shocked or surprised when at the end of the day, after years of being denigrated, insulted, and shunted aside as some sideshow, the guy finally says, fuck you. I'm throwing my weight behind this guy. Because even though he has clarified on numerous occasions that he didn't necessarily care that much for Donald Trump, he at least was thankful that the guy said exactly what was on his mind and where he was coming from. That is the biggest delineation line between what happened here. You have one group of people who at every opportunity have censored, lied, and obfuscated. And the other side that's saying some uncomfortable or maybe unpopular things, but at least you know exactly what they're thinking. They're not lying to you. So in the future, if you want to have your own Joe Rogan, that is not Joe Rogan himself, maybe don't treat that person like absolute trash. Just a suggestion. Cheers.